Hi, this is Pierre-Yves Delacote, working at Planet Technologies. I wanted to talk about transparency. By the way, I'm using a Snap filter that you can install on your computer. There's tons of Snap filters you can use, just like this one, and you can use it with Teams and or other system that are using your webcam. So, transparency. We talk a lot about transparency today, nowadays. You can hear the politics saying, for example, for the coronavirus, we all communicate everything transparently. We want to be transparent about all the information you need. And even within maybe your organization, you heard that your management is talking about transparency, how it is important to collaborate in using this new, how can I say that, concept of transparency, which is not new, but apparently it seems to be really important. And I'm the first one who's talking a lot about transparency, especially when it comes about collaboration. So I just want to um, talk a little bit about that concept of transparency because there's a lot of confusion. I've heard a lot of confusion going on about this concept because transparency, depending on the way it's understood, can be bad actually. Um, for example, in a dictature, um, often the transparency is key for the dictature because they want to know what's going on. Everything has to be transparent so they know who's doing what where. So that's a bad aspect of transparency. If I take the example of coronavirus, even in a democracy, um, it's it can be dangerous if you're transparent. If, for example, you're explaining like there's 1.4% of people in the US who are dying from coronavirus when they get it. So do the math. If there's all the population gets it, then it's going to be 5 million people. So that's pretty scary. So if you're transparent, it means first that you need to be transparent to help the other people, not to stress them. So being transparent is not to say everything that you can say. It's not about over communicating. You can think that being transparent is to say everything and that is accessible to everybody, uh, but you might want to look at what you communicate. There are things that are not useful, that are adding to the noise of what you're hearing. There are things that can be stressful. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't communicate what's stressful, but I think you should think about it before communicating. And it's not because you're not going to communicate that it's a bad thing. I think it's if you don't communicate because you can maybe what you're going to communicate might scare um, 90% of the population, and when it concerns 1% of the population, that's not that's not good. So being transparent needs um, To be, that means you need to be wise when you're communicating on what you're communicating and to who you're communicating. The concept behind transparency is not to hide information that is key for the people. That's the main driver, I think, to follow. Um, so when you have to communicate about a change, about a digital transformation, first I think that you can be transparent about what's going on, what is the process to make people understand that everything is on board in the change, that you might not give all the details of what's going on, but everything is on board. Everybody who has to be on board is on board. Most of the decisions are transparent, so you can understand what they are. You might not see all the process behind the scene, but you have access to the person if you want to ask. So my point here is when you're talking about transparency, um, it's not to me, it's not that you need to communicate everything about anything you're doing. Um, like even if you collaborate in a project, within a project, you're not going to talk about everything you're doing in the project. Mainly, you're going to share what is important and share it with everybody within the project. And you share what's important for people to know, so they have all the information they need. And if you can feel that, sometimes it can create stress. Uh, I don't know, for example, right now when you're during this coronavirus crisis, there are some projects that might be posing. So you might want to explain that that's normal, that it's posing. There might be some issues for your business, but you're working on issues. You might not want to put everybody at stress explaining how you work on those issues unless people want to help. So being transparent is not about over communicating, about saying everything. I think it's about saying that what is useful for the people who are onboarding in the same project. If it's a change project or whatever project, being transparent is be sure to work out loud so people can have the maximum of useful information so they can work better, having all the information they need, but it does mean all the information you can give to them. So I wanted to talk about transparency because transparency is not always good, as you can see now with the coronavirus, with all the information. There's so many that we don't know what is good or not. So we need some leadership here to make understandable what's good for us. In terms of, it doesn't mean to be over positive. It means to reassure when we need to be assured. When there's an issue, we need to know what is the issue, and we need to better understand with the maximum of useful information. That's what transparency is to me. Hope it helps. Give me your feedback if you have other thinking about this topic.